Is it worth anyone's time to speculate about unreleased Star Citizen ships, or are concepts just JPEGs that, even if they come out, will change anyways? If you expect a heated opinion piece, this might be the wrong video for you. Instead, I want to try to find a less emotional and more measured answer today. Before the Ironclad came out, I have been rebuilding the whole ship based on the original concept, made multiple prediction videos based on that, and shared these interactive scenes you could walk around in your web browser. But now that it is out, let's compare how accurate all that actually was. Obviously, that will not give us a definitive answer because every concept phase is different, and also newer concepts will be a lot more precise than older ones when metrics and game mechanics were not where they are today. I also won't go over how I rebuilt the interior, there already is a video doing just that, which I will put in the description. Let's start with the most important question. Did the Ironclad grow from concept to final? And it did not. Here you have the concept HoloView model in the back and the final in the front. For the rest of the video I have colored the concept version, so the HoloView model with my interior blue, and the final in-game one in its iconic red. Plenty of ships have grown during development, and generally that is absolutely fine if there's a need for it, but these two being so close is an early sign that the concept nailed the fundamentals. The missile launchers have switched sides, and we'll get to the elevator later, but apart from that, the exterior looks pretty much exactly like it was promised. For the hangar interior, the Ironclad Q&A was very specific and promised a volume of 40 by 21 by 7.5 meters, so I stuck with exactly that in my reconstruction. Note that 7.5 meters is exactly the height of 3 big SCU crates, hence only 2 would fit without problems. I said early on I hoped it increased just a tiny bit to fit that third row of crates as well as being spacious enough for that vulture. And in the end it did grow by 1.1 meters in height compared to that planned 7.5 meters to fit exactly that extra crate. But how if I said the exterior did not change? Well, I said barely changed. Length and width are close, but the overall height grew by about 0.6 meters. Not enough to immediately see it, but that already covers half the additional height we need. And then the rest of the trick was to make the retractable roof paper thin. In places it is only 3 centimeters thick. I don't want to talk about believability here, this is literally a flying steel brick after all, and they for sure have better and sturdier construction material than we do, but considering this is still a Drake ship, this is a little too nimble for my taste. I'm not really complaining, I wanted the extra height and I'm grateful for it, but it's part of the reason I did not went with a thinner roof in my reconstruction. It felt a little unbelievable to me. That was the height. For the width, it's a question of where you measure, but I would argue the edges of these cargo grids is what should align with the metrics the concept advertised. And as you can see, it actually shrunk, but just by 33 centimeters. The concept did show the cargo grid or the crates perpendicular to the hangar length, which left this unused area in the back. But now the grid is parallel to the hangar walls, filling out the full space to the back and fixing the complaint that a mule from the back would not fit through a full hold. Great change, because now there is over 5.5 meters space in the center. Or in other words, there would be space for about another 768 SCU CIG is keeping from you. Such a scam. The length of my rebuilt hangar was accurate within 10 centimeters, so overall definitely within the margin of error I promised. The adjustment in height obviously affects predictions about what ships this hangar could fit, but let's look at that at the end of the video and continue with the ship layout for now, because the predictions got a little worse from here. We are getting to the stairwell, and we were informed mid-development about significant changes to improve traversal, but no details. I made some predictions that were partially right, like putting the entrance to the stairs into the center instead of the mule bay, but I never got the new layout completely right, especially not the main elevator. The verdict here is that with these intentionally vague roadmap updates, speculation is a bit hit or miss, because there are always multiple options that are possible. But what if we are getting more than breadcrumbs? This unlabeled teaser from a monthly report showed a new ladder that was not present in the concept. And from the angle of this corridor I was able to pinpoint its location in the ship, as well as where it connects to the floor above, accurate to about half a meter, and that was about 3 to 4 months before the ship came out. I won't go over every room and corridor in the ship, but there were a few more decent predictions that came out of the rebuild, like the obstructed visibility from the command deck, or just the general feel of the habitation area. If you want to have a closer look for yourself, I will put a link to these top-down cutaway renders in 8K resolution in the video description too. Then there were also some minor but kinda obvious flaws or oversights in the concept that not only me but a number of people saw and predicted pretty accurately. For example, the fact that originally there was no way to get cargo to the front secret storage, which ended up being solved by these two elevators. Or that there would need to be some kind of top surface access to make sense of all these platforms and handrails on the top of the ship. But completely new additions, like the connection between command deck and the new elevator, or the elevator itself, are great additions that are pretty hard to predict exactly. But arguably these little layout changes are interesting to me, but for the majority of players it does not change anything fundamentally about the value of the ship. What does, however, and what always is a big part of my streams and videos, is the question what other ships might fit any given concept. I try to be cautious with these guesses, but people just love to know if their favorite ship might end up fitting, so I try my best to make an informed guess. And now we can check on this example how informed those guesses ended up being. So here are about 10 of my early predictions tested back to back against the final outcome. Let's start with an important one, the Drake Golem. I predicted 6. Technically you can get 4 next to each other, but they are janking around, so I wouldn't count that. I was able to fit 7, and I think I would have been able to fit 7 in the concept too. It just doesn't make too much sense because you can't get around properly. The Prospector I said would fit. Didn't check for a second one though, and it does fit. Still haven't checked for a second one. I said the Vulture would fit if the roof grew just a little. Turns out it does. Here I placed 3 Buccaneers. Note that there's the wall in the back because this was specifically for the Assault. Now the Assault does not have that limitation anymore, so you can fit a few more, but the pattern of having these facing each other is still working pretty well. And I think even though you can now fit 5, you can see that the dimension, the length is pretty accurate. Then we have the Cutlass Black. I said, or actually the whole of your model gave away that it's a tiny bit too wide around the engines, and it still is. Then the Vanguard is interesting. I said that it might work if you can fold in the wings, and you actually can, but the wings just stick out a tiny bit. So not super feasible, but at least the landing gear is touching the ground and it's properly standing. Someone wanted to see if the Zeus fits. I said I think it's a tiny bit too wide. That also stayed true. Someone wanted to see a Herald. I said we can fit 2, but pointed out that the top would intersect with the roof. And for some reason, even with the changes of 1.5 meters, it still does intersect a tiny bit. You could still risk it, but it's janky. The Gladius, I said you could probably comfortably fit 2. Note that this is the Assault again, so now you can actually fit a 3rd one in the back. Someone wanted to see the Hull A, and I said it's a tiny bit too high. But for this one, the additional height that we got actually made this possible, and it actually fits too. The Pisces, again I tested that with the Assault layout, so I said 4. Using the full length you can now fit 6, maybe even 8. Pole spikes, I said more than 400, I didn't check. And then more for fun than anything else, I did show the Drake Clipper in the hangar, obviously sticking out, and it does actually fit. And more than that, you can lock the top hangar door via the engineering terminal to not close, and then you can actually quantum travel like that. No jank, it works fine, which is amazing, and means the Vanguard should also work. So overall, an outcome I'm pretty happy with. But as I said in the beginning, this was a concept that managed to stick very accurately to its first idea. Also, the hangar is pretty much just a box. Looking at the Galaxy, for example, just the shape of the hangar makes these kind of predictions harder and less accurate already. And we can never fully know which concept is perfect and which gets adjusted along the way. Lastly, we are able to make pretty accurate predictions based on the current technical limitations in the game. The concept, as I understood, had a hangar tractor beam that would be able to move on 2 axes to reach every part of the grid. But in-game we only really have the tech to switch between 2 fixed positions, as seen on the Spirit or the Scorpius. I would assume an additional axis would not be that hard to implement, but more often than not we end up with simpler solutions that are already working, so I think no one who followed the development history really expected what was in the concept here, and I expect a similar fate for the Galaxy's cargo crane system. However, here's an example showing that the opposite can be true. In one of the first videos I said something like, to show its role as a heavily armored freighter, it even has these armor plates on the sides. Maybe that is a sign that physicalized armor might be coming soon, but probably it's just visuals. Turns out, you can actually shoot these off. In the front too. How cool is that? And the ship looks even cooler now. So my personal verdict, creators like Grim or myself, and to a degree everyone who takes the time to play with tools like StarJump Fleet Viewer, can make pretty accurate predictions at times. However, at times we cannot. The moral is, this type of content has a lot of value to it if you enjoy thinking and dreaming about the next spaceship on the horizon as much as we do. However, don't buy a ship because some guy on YouTube told you your Galaxy will absolutely fit 600 pulse bikes. Buy it for the role it was presented as. In the Ironclad's case, an extremely efficiently loadable cargo brick, but if you make deliberate plans on using this as a self-sufficient frontline snap carrier with salvage and medical options, maybe wait till the ship is out. Sometimes we get gifts that make it better than the concept, for example the fact that the Ironclad Assault hangar did not end up with the more restricted hangar dimensions it had in the concept. Sometimes we lose something we absolutely loved in the concept that just did not work out in reality. Speculating about spaceships is part of the fun for many Star Citizen fans, and I do not want to make a point or give an opinion about concept sales in general here. CIG is moving away from them anyways, but with the many old concepts still on the horizon, just be prepared and expect that it is not always possible or feasible to develop a ship exactly how you wanted it to be. I just try my best to create hype and fun with my ship prediction videos, but at the same time I try to be as transparent and accurate in communicating what my predictions are based on. And for the Ironclad it worked out pretty well, because the original concept by Gavin Rothery was pretty accurate and detailed. That might not always be the case. And that's all I got. As always, the biggest thanks to my Patreon and channel members for the ongoing support, which enables me to make niche content like this. Speaking of, if you are a member, I have just posted the third part in my exclusive look behind the production of my most ambitious video to date. Now thank you all for watching, and see you in the verse.